Hello and welcome to this video series on the Gimp 2.4. Now in this video we're going to be covering the remaining transform tools, namely the crop tool, the rotate tool, the scale tool, the shear tool, the perspective tool, and the flip tool. So let's go ahead and jump right on into this by opening up an image so we can play around with it. Open, and I got one here picked out. It's kind of a funky looking dude here where I don't know if this is a mohawk or a comb over got caught in the windstorm. But in either case, so I think he'll do just fine for our purposes. Now then, the crop tool, got a couple of ways where we can get here, and that is just as I did. Click on the icon in our toolbox, or you can hold the shift key down and tap on the letter C as in cat on your keyboard, and that will get us here as well. Or up along the top here in the menu, go to tools. And remember, these are all transform tools, so we go down here to transform tools, over to crop, and you can see the rest of the transform tools we'll be working with here as well, so you can get here for those as well. And here also on the far right gives you the shortcut keystrokes for those. Or you can just right click on the image, again go down to tools and come down to transform tools, and the same thing. So that's the shortcuts and the ways in which we can get to the different transform tools when needed. Now with crop, basically what this is going to do is cut a section of the image that we're working with out for us to use, and leaving the rest of it in the trash can. So we've got a few options here that we can work with for the crop tool. The bottom one here, the shrink merged, and these top two are basically going to be used if we have multiple layers that are working at the same time. Right now we only have the one layer, this guy's image. So as far as this video is concerned, we're not going to be touching base on these three items here. Now the expand from center is simply an additional tool to assist you in deciding what's going to be cropped. You can do this just manually, but expand from center, just as it sounds like, you find this pretty much the center of what you're going to be hanging on to. In this case, I just basically want to keep his head, and so we're going to stick it right around his nose here and just move this out until we get pretty much what we want. Now then you just let go of the left mouse button. By the way, that's what I was doing, was holding the left mouse button down and dragging it. You've got these markers here. You can use these to fine-tune your selection as such. And again, play around with this until you get comfy with it, because I am not going to want all of this. I just want the head, not so much the tie and the hairdo. So that's the expand from center. Now you've got the fixed here, which I had never really messed with. That limits the flexibility of what you can choose. But again, it's here for a reason, so I'm sure that at some point down the line there would be a need for this. So that's what that's for, is to fix either based on the aspect ratio, which keeps everything in tune with the current size, the width, the height, and of course the size. But I just leave that unticked. Get off of there. And the position is where on the image your selection is at, and these two are more manual of what we're doing now. I'd rather do it the free form way. Again, it gives me a little more flexibility. The highlight is basically, as you can see here, it's gray, now it's not, so I leave that ticked. Again, it gives you a little bit more of a, a way to work with. Now this size, if you've got an actual dimension that you're trying to work within, then you could type this in here and eliminate some of the guesswork here. For example, if you've got 80 by 120, then hit your enter button and there you go. And that's just about right. Now if you can keep your mouse or the cursor out pretty much right in the center where you've got the move tool emblem, like this guy here, the 4 arrows, then you can hold your left mouse button down and move this anywhere within the selected region you want. And this here will work just fine for what we want. And then once you've got the area that you want to crop selected, hit your enter button and boom, there you have it. Now then, that's the crop. And again, you've got all these options here you can mess around with. Now the rotate is just like it sounds. Basically you're going to be rotating the image that you're working with. Now then, for these remaining 5 tools, they're all going to have basically the same, well, except for this last one here, the flip. They're all going to have basically the same options available. And I would suggest just leaving the default as it is. So that way, well, again, for the sake of this video anyway, that's what we're going to do. The interpolation is really something that would only come into play if you're dealing with some high-end graphics, very large, pixelated, 300 plus DPI resolutions. Otherwise, for the sake of ebook creations or header footer type creations, then you can just leave this as cubic. Quick information. Cubic, what this interpolation does is as you make your transformations, whether you're making this larger or flipping it or squeezing the guy's face together, while you're transforming it, the Gimp software is trying to determine where this particular pixel is going to be, so that it keeps the color of his cheeks the same no matter how you squish his face together, so that it keeps the color of his blue collar the same no matter how much you stretch it apart. The cubic is the most accurate of these 3. I'm not sure what the 4th one does, but the cubic is the most accurate of these 3, but it takes a little bit longer for Gimp to figure out what goes where. The none is a little less accurate, but it happens a lot quicker. And then the linear, as it is in the kind of the middle, it takes the best of both. It's a little faster than the cubic, but a little less accurate than the none, if that makes any sense. Now, to give you an idea as to why this really makes no difference whatsoever, the cubic, as far as what we're working with here, again, it's the most accurate, and when I say it's the longest, this might take a matter of, say, 1 second, whereas the none, which is faster but less accurate, might take 1/10 of a second. So again, there's really no difference for what we're going to be using here. So we can just leave pretty much all this alone. Now the 15 degree down here, if you hold the control button down on your keyboard, what this will do is it will allow you to rotate in 15 degree increments. So with this ticked, bring this back up here, let's say we want to rotate this guy's face 90 degrees. It'll do it in 15 degree increments. So if you were watching up here, you can see that it's happening in 15 degree increments. Now that's one way where you can rotate the image you're working with. And this works pretty good too if you're working with text, and so you want to put this along the side of your ebook creation and you type out the text horizontally, then you grab your rotate tool and you want to flip it 90 degrees. Now then you could either do so this way with this box ticked, or you can type it in here 90 degrees, or you can use the slider bar here and do the same thing. And that's the rotate tool. Now the scale tool, I usually have never really messed with this on the toolbox because I get a little more accuracy for what I'm wanting to do, because scale is basically changing the size. You're either increasing or decreasing the size of the image. So I go up here to the image on the menu bar and come down here to scale image, and let's say this is the original image that we're working with right now, the original dimensions. Let's say I want 100 in the width. Well, it's going to maintain the aspect ratio here so that it doesn't look all warped and fatty. So we type in 100 and then hit scale. Pick our image, print scale. So you can see how it adjusted this from 120 to 150 because we increased this by 80, but it increased this automatically by 30, I believe it was, yeah. And so that's why I use the image up here and not so much the scale tool down here in our toolbox, because it just gives us a little more flexibility up here for some odd reason. Now then, if for say you wanted a certain part of, let's get rid of you, let's say you just want a certain part of this guy's face right here, then I've used this scale for that. But again, I don't have that need very often. Show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so we got this, and click on the image here. We're going to make it pretty big, and you can see the part that's selected, where the little mice is, right around here. mice. I mean the ants. Gosh, I'm always doing that. Okay, so this here, we just want to keep this part of his face selected. So then we hit the enter key and boom, that's now selected. But again, I don't have the need for that very often, so that's why I don't mess with. Whenever I'm trying to change the size of the image, I always use the image up here. And oh, and there's other options you can do up here too that are not available here. And that is, let's say we wanted to transform, you can flip it, you can rotate it 180 or 90 degrees. So that's pretty much what I would use as far as the scale tool is. Again, you've got the ability to do so here, but I find more accuracy and more abilities here under the image menu. So let's move on to the shear tool. Let me break this guy up so we got a little bit more to work with here. Now the shear and the perspective tool, I find that they're most useful for making some odd looking shapes, namely say a shadow effect on the base of an ebook cover that you're making. Oh yeah, I'm still here. Let's go ahead and click on this icon so that we can get to the shear tool rather than leaving it at the scale tool. So again, as I was saying, this is where you can kind of manipulate the image a little bit to give it that little look there. And this is the shear tool, and you can get the same type of let's hit the Control Z, get back to the original of sorts. You get the same kind of manipulation ability by using the perspective tool, only a little bit different, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Kind of like a page turn or a page flip. And that's what I've found before, is that people have used the perspective tool for those little corner turn downs, peel away ad type deals, and that's how they are able to make those, or a part of that anyway, is through the perspective tool. Go ahead and get back to the original here. But that's pretty much the shear and the perspective tool. That's just to kind of manipulate make it a little more funky looking, for lack of a better word. After we've kind of made him even funnier than what he originally was, the last in our transform tools is the flip tool. And go and click on this, and again we've got two options here, basically horizontal, where we're going to flip them left to right, or the vertical, where we're going to make them upside down or right side up. So these are going to have some pretty useful needs. The transform tools here, again, the one that I find to use the most is the crop, the rotate, and the scale tool, because these here, and I from time to time will use the flip tool as well, but the shear and perspective, those are more specialty tools that I have used in the past, but not as often as these other four. So I hope you enjoyed this video on the final items in our transform tool section, and I'm sure you're going to be able to find a good use for all these tools. So thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.